Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Hello and welcome to Lost in Science. It is the greatest science in the world, right at the convenience of your ear holes. What could be more convenient than that? I can tell you what could be more convenient than that. Our wonderful presenters. I've got to make that mistake of erstwhile before. It means former. It's wrong. It sounds good, but it's not appropriate. Our wonderful presenters, Stu and Kat. How are you both?
Very well.
Very whale.
Very whale.
Very whale.
Oh, interesting. My curiosity is piqued, but I'm going to ask Stu first of all. How are you, whale, today?
I'm a bit more mousy.
Oh,
yeah. Did you? I watch a lot of TV, and I grew up watching a lot of TV. And I used to watch the Tom and Jerry show, which is not, it was my favourite cartoons because, I would much prefer, I don't know, Marvin the Martian or something. But Tom and Jerry, I remember an episode of Tom and Jerry called The Invisible Mouse, where Jerry Mouse jumps in a bottle of invisible ink. And of course, being cartoon logic, physics, becomes invisible and wreaks havoc upon poor hapless Tom while he's invisible. Of course, that's not how invisible ink works. But
it's how cartoons work, though.
That is how cartoons work. But this story I've got this week sounds like something out of a cartoon. There's some scientists who've worked out that you can make bits of a mouse invisible by painting something on them.
Oh, so it is similar
that sounds
to
counterintuitive, but wow.
It is basically cartoon physics come to life. But yeah, I'll explain how that works and what it owes to H.G. Wells a bit later in the show.
Okay. And can you paint a doorway in a wall and walk through it?
Not quite yet, but I'm sure they're working on it. Portable holes is the next big step, I think.
That's right. Well, now, after a bit of mousy physics, let us go. I'm thinking let's go for something quite deep. What do you reckon, Kat?
Yeah, I'm going to make a bit of a splash. But speaking of holes, I'm going to talk about whale blowholes and tools that they use and whales' sex and sneezes. Lots of different things to do with whales.
Lovely. Sounds like it's more than just a fluke coming from you.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, that is some excellent science there, it sounds, and I am very much looking forward to hearing all about these things. So let us get on with the show.
I'm Maggie Adair Pocock, and you're listening to Lost in Science.
Now, I love a science story about science fiction coming true. It's just something that I've enjoyed my entire life, watching some of my favorite things come to life from the pages of fiction or from the screens of fiction, I suppose. But it's especially true when the story is a classic of the genre and probably or possibly one of the oldest stories to be called science fiction, I suppose. And you've probably heard of H.G. Wells, who's a British writer of the late 19th and 20th centuries. He's written some absolute classics of the genre: Martian Invasion in War of the Worlds, Time Travel in the Time Machine. But one of his other really famous works was published in 1897, simply titled The Invisible Man. And The Invisible Man became this, the inspiration, the source of a series of films, and he occupied the same universe as Dracula and Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman at Universal Pictures in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen The Invisible Man on film.
Fair. It's pretty easy to miss.
Yeah.
Classically, he's wrapped up in bandages and he's got glasses, because it wouldn't make much of he doesn't make much of an entrance as the Invisible Man, does he?
No.
The basis of the story, though, it's less horrific, even though he sort of got lumped in with the horror characters, I suppose, for many years. But the scientist at the center of the story does have a sort of mental breakdown as a result of his experiments in invisibility, which is where the horror comes from. He sort of goes on a rampage. Sorry, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the 1942 Invisible Man. But there was at least a reasonable scientific idea behind the invisibility. And I think H.G. Wells did sort of tend to try and work a bit of science into his science fiction. The idea being that if the human body, or any object really, could match the optical properties of the environment, the air around it, it would become invisible. So it's a pretty sort of simple concept. It's the practicalities of that concept that really is where the sort of fiction comes into it.
Yeah, if I can recall from the book, he the scientist in question was himself an albino.
Yes,
and so did not have pigment in his skin or hair, and so he reasoned that if he could change the refractive index of his tissues to match that of air, then you'd not be able to see him.
Not be able to see him at all. Yes. There's some obvious problems with this. The most obvious being that if a person became transparent to light, they wouldn't be able to see, because your eyes have to absorb light in order to be able to recognize things.
There is that, yeah.
Bit of a problem with
so
that.
So would you maybe just have like eyes floating around, like so that the light could at least get in the eyes?
There's a bit in the book where he actually does it to a cat, and the cat's eyes are still visible. So there's these disembodied cat's eyes running around the place, which is kind of creepy. And, having seen cats in the dark, and they scare the bejesus out of you because you can see their eyes flashing at you. The other thing is that there are so many different types of tissue and different structures in the human body that a single serum, as is suggested in the story, wouldn't really produce the desired effect. There'd be some sort of indication that there was someone there. You'd see something, and I'm sort of reminded of the Predator in the film Predator. You can sort of see that he's there because he's refracting the light, but there's something obviously there still, and I think you'd get something like that. But the idea of altering the optical refractive properties of some tissues would really offer some real-world benefits to medicine, not the ability to invisibly wreak havoc on society and, walk into bank vaults and all those kind of things. But in actual fact, scientists at the Department of Materials Science and Engineering at Stanford University in the United States have done just that, according to their recently published paper in the journal Science. So, using a dye applied to the skin of a mouse, they have made the skin cells transparent so that the inner workings of the mouse are visible to the naked eye through the skin of the mouse.
Whoa. That sounds creepy. Really cool, but creepy.
Yeah, and so they tried it on chicken breast tissue. They just got a little strip of chicken breast and they applied this substance, and they could see through it, and you can read text through the chicken breast. Later they applied it through a mouse's abdominal skin, and you could see through the mouse's abdomen into its organs and the blood vessels inside the mouse.
Hey, so what's going on here? So hang on, they're applying to the outside of a chicken breast,
Yep.
and somehow that means you can see through the chicken breast. How
So
does that work?
it's a very thin strip of chicken meat, basically,
Okay.
that they were using. And similarly with the mouse organs, they've applied it just to they've shaved the mouse's belly and applied it to the skin on the outside, and you can see through the skin.
So how does it work?
So, basically, it's a water-soluble dye, and it works by absorbing light wavelengths in the ultraviolet to blue end of the spectrum, and it allows red and orange light to pass through more easily without getting scattered by the skin cells, as it would usually do. And you know that your skin is, or our skin, is relatively transparent. You can see through it, you know. If you get a thin layer of skin, you can see light coming through it. The reason you can't see objects through it is because it gets scattered by the structure of the skin. And so this dye is basically altering that scattering so that you can see more direct light through the skin. They also were able to look into a mouse's brain and see blood vessels clearly without any damage to the living mouse. These are living mice that they were doing this to.
So they can see through the skull.
They've got a very thin skull, apparently.
Mm.
I think they were looking at the outside of the brain. They said they could see blood vessels that feed the brain of the mouse. So there you go. So as I said, it's a water-soluble dye. And the really interesting part is that the dye they used wasn't some special concoction. They didn't make something to do this. They used something that is actually really commonly available and, in fact, used as a food dye that many people have probably eaten in their lives. So the dye they were using is called tartrazine, which is also known as E102. So if you look at the ingredients of something that's yellow in colour and it looks a bit artificially, it's probably got E102 in it, which is the yellow food dye that they use for colouring things like the flavouring on cheese-flavoured corn chips, for example, and yellow and orange fizzy drinks. That's what they commonly use it for. So basically, I don't know how they came up with the idea of, hey, let's just get some of this tartrazine and shave a mouse and paint it on its belly and see what happens. I don't know how they came at this hypothesis, but they tested it and it worked. Now, I should point out there have been some people concerned about the health impacts of this food dye. It is a commonly used food dye in that azo group of food dyes, but there's no conclusive studies have shown any correlation with any specific ill effects, including the common one of people saying they make children hyperactive. There's no actual evidence that this dye does that. And although some people are allergic to the dye, but there's people who are allergic to lots of things, so it's not necessarily an issue with the dye, just something that you'd probably want to bring up before they paint it all over you. So no tests have been carried out on humans to make their skin transparent, but the potential for looking for tumours or abnormalities below the skin without the need for surgery is very exciting for doctors and probably a bit gross to most other people. Just the idea of being able to look through people's skin. They also think that they may be able to find dyes that match other tissues and potentially inject them directly under the skin so they can look even deeper into living bodies without damaging the subject. But yeah, the fact that they figured this out with a commonly available dye that's already in foods, maybe you could just make the process simpler and just feed up your patients with a diet of corn chips and fizzy orange drink to speed up the process. You don't have to inject anything then. Just eat up, have as much as you like, and we'll be able to see what the problem is.
Don't worry about the flow-on effects, but that's wild.
I think we're lost.
We're not lost.
Not even any short-range radio signals yet?
Except for a single, very powerful radio emission.
Of course, a transmitter of that sort isn't exactly standard equipment.
Science and technology must be absolutely mind-boggling.
Of course, it's mostly on the theoretical side.
Well, so far.
Across Australia on the Community Radio Network, you're listening to Lost in Science.
Well, hello there. You're listening to Lost in Science, and I'm talking about whales. I feel like I've already kind of used that pun in the introduction, but you know, my intention was to use it now. So here we go. I want to talk about a few different things that we've recently learnt about whales, because whales are actually traditionally quite difficult and challenging to study. They're deep, they're in the ocean. It's a little bit tricky for researchers to get down there and have a look. So something that people have found recently is that humpback whales use tools. Maybe not the kinds of tools that we're used to, but they use tools nonetheless. So researchers at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology and Alaska Whale Foundation recently classified humpback whales as tool wielders, and that's the actual classification. They are tool wielders now.
So what kind of tools are we talking about here? That's
Great
the obvious question.
We're talking about bubbles, but they specifically craft these bubbles to be actual tools. So they blow bubbles in patterns that form bubble nets to hunt. So it's essentially like they use nets, but nets made of bubbles because they're underwater. And they manipulate these bubbles in a variety of ways to increase the number of krill that they can catch for food when they're in their Alaskan feeding ground. So they can actively control details like the number of rings that they're making, or the size and the depth of the net and the spacing between the bubbles. And that helps them capture up to 7 times more prey in a single feeding dive without using any extra energy. So they do need to save as much energy as possible because their energy budget for the entire year depends on their ability to capture enough food during the summer and the autumn when they're in Alaska. And so this places humpback whales in the rare group of animals that both make and use their own tools for hunting.
So they're sort of they're using them to herd the krill, kind of.
Yeah, kind of like get them all in one spot and go
as many in a single mouthful as they can squeeze in there. Wow, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, so they're being quite like nifty and clever about it, and it's cool itself. But knowing how animals like the humpback whale hunt is key to their survival, and if we can understand this behavior, it helps us sort of better think about how we can monitor and conserve their feeding grounds that are critical for their survival.
It's a very kind of different view of a tool, really, isn't it, when what we think about? I mean, it's not a sort of solid thing. It's not even you could think of like a bubble as, well, it's just part of water, really. I mean, they're just manipulating the water, I suppose, in some sense, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they're really just, manipulating water and air, I guess.
They're just single-use tools.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, at least it seems sustainable.
Yeah. They can make as many as they want.
Mm-hmm,
so they invented bubble wrap, is what you're saying.
Renewable resource. But reading about this actually made me realize how little we know about whales, and so I started to do a little bit of digging, and some other things I want to tell you are a little bit less recent, but relatively recent nonetheless. So prior to the year 2022, which was only 2 years ago, scientists had never actually seen whales having sex. But scientists in the warm tropical waters of Hawaii, so Hawaii again, documented, the occasional sort of extruded or exposed whale penis, but no scientist had actually seen whales in the act.
I imagine it's not something you're going to get too close to, really.
Well, yeah, but it is, again, important to understand animal behavior and think about how they reproduce. But yes, you're right. You probably don't want to be like too close. And there's something else that I'll talk about in a minute that you definitely don't want to be too close to. But 2 humpback whales were captured on camera in Maui, showing whales having sex for the first time in January 2022. But then the study wasn't actually published until this year. So it kind of is recent news. And it wasn't just the first observation of humpback whales having sex. It was the first observation of sex between 2 male whales.
Oh.
Which is really, really cute. So in this case, one of the male whales was injured and in poor health, while the other one was seemingly healthy and appeared to mate with him. So 2 males They can't produce offspring, but seeing the whale sex for the first time does provide insight for marine biologists, scientists, to think about how a male and a female might reproduce. And perhaps male-to-male copulation for whales is a way of practicing reproductive behaviors, or maybe it's some form of social activity. We actually don't know yet. But that was interesting.
So the fact that one was injured, did that kind of then affect the way they had sex, I suppose?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, and you kind of hope that, like, you know, the one that was in poor health, like, wasn't worse off because of it. But, yeah. Yeah, it was at least very interesting for the scientists to see, and even if it is a little bit different to what happens in the wild, it's still an insight nonetheless. So,
yeah. They
now,
don't call them humpbacks for nothing.
You went there, I didn't.
No.
Thank you, Chris. Now, the result of sex and reproduction is, you know, offspring, a baby. But that also hadn't been completely viewed until relatively recently. And when I say completely, so I'm talking about birth now, the birth of a whale calf. There were a handful of like near complete humpback whale births that had previously been caught on film, usually with like a little tiny tail appearing as the baby emerges from the mother's body. But the whole process from start to finish hadn't been captured until March 2021. So when I talk about the whole process, I mean the mum just before calving, so the pregnant mother, and then the calf coming out of the mum, and then the period immediately after birth. So this was the first time that they'd caught all of it. So what happened in March 2021 was something called a heat run. This is what I said. You probably don't want to be too close to this. So what's happening in a heat run
sounds dangerous.
Yeah. For human. Well, actually, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the female in this case, but then again, I am a human, so I'm coming in with my human perspective here. But a single humpback female in a heat run is being chased by many males, all competing for her attention. And the female, you know, actually kind of lures them along on this chase, and the chase can last for hours. And people have actually commented on the fact that, like, they've been on a boat and they see, like, all these whales rushing towards them and then, like, just keep going past, and it's all very, very fast. So, like, it's a very fast-paced thing. And, so this female is running along, kind of going like, come on. And the males follow, fighting each other pretty aggressively all the while. So that's why I said you probably don't want to be too close to that. But essentially the female whale spends huge amounts of energy birthing and raising her calves. So the female spends more time than males at the polar feeding grounds. And it also seems like females don't mate every single year. So what this means is that males are spending more time in the tropical areas looking for chances to mate. So as a result, at any given time, there are more males than females in the mating grounds. So it's like they're all trying to pounce on whichever female comes their way. So in this case, in March 2021, during this heat run, the female was pregnant, and it's not unusual for male humpback whales to kind of show interest in pregnant females or new mothers with calves, because humpback whales, they don't form like really long-term couples. Instead, they mate with various different partners. So they probably weren't like particularly deterred by the fact that this female was pregnant. So they're all chasing this female, but then... And this is what the scientists were capturing. They were like, oh, heat run, yeah, let's do it. But then the males in this case and the scientists turned into spectators as the mother appeared to be close to giving birth. A little small tail was emerging from her body. And then the lead male in this chase, in this heat run, was filmed deliberately blowing bubbles underneath her. So again, using bubbles as a tool. So now we know humpback whales are known to blow bubbles to help them catch their food, but even marine biologists don't really know like what the exact purpose of the whole bubble blowing during the whale birth was. But one researcher suggests that perhaps it's like the male whale giving like the mum a little spiral, a little massage by blowing bubbles underneath as she's giving birth. So yeah, the bubbles come in handy there too.
I mean, I guess they're probably not like big enough to make the whale the calf boy into something like that to bring it to the surface or anything like that.
Yeah, so they think perhaps it's just like a sort of like relaxing, helps the mother a little bit. If you're in the chase for the mother's attention, it probably doesn't hurt to be like given a nice soothing massage.
Oh yeah, but it's a bit generous. It sounds also a bit more generous than you'd expect from the.
Yeah. So yeah, how much community they have, I guess we still don't really know.
So is this have they been finding all this stuff recently because of some change in their observation skills or something, or have they just got a project that's happened to catch all these things at once?
Well, with this, it's chance. It's partly chance, but it's also partly our ability to observe things over longer times, and have drones, have cameras, like going out there, having like not traps or something, but like bait associated with different things, so that you can like capture the whales doing certain things. So yeah, I think it's both chance and our ability to think about how do we answer these questions. And I think that's brilliant that scientists can do that.
Science with a porpoise.
Yes.
Well, not really, but I'm trying to think of more whale puns, but I haven't got anything.
Well, at least we didn't flip out.
I mean, I was going to say, because it was 2 male whales, it was like Humpback Mountain.
Yeah. No.
Mountain, because he was mounted in the other
one. Maybe.
That one I'll take.
I was going to leave it, but
And that's it for another episode of Lost in Science. Lost in Science is recorded for 3CR in Melbourne on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and it airs across Australia on the Community Radio Network with the support of the Community Broadcasting Foundation. We would love you to get in touch with us. You can email us at lostinsci@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook, we're Lost in Science on 3CR, or on Twitter, where we're at Lost in Science 1. You can find us on your favourite podcast app, where if you get the chance, please give us a good rating and review, as that will raise us up in the search rankings so other people can find the science. Or you can listen to us however you listen to us now, where the same time every week, Claire, Stu and Chris get
Lost in Science!
Thanks for listening to a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online.